Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around is a review of the 1994 period piece comedy, The Road to Wellville. Now, before I get around to sharing my thoughts on this movie, I want to give a very special shout out to Andrew for sending me this film on DVD, as well as a few others in a very generous package he sent a while back. And I asked him if there was a particular film that he wanted me to share my thoughts on as a way to repay him for the gift, and he mentioned The Road to Wellville, and I got to be honest, I'm glad he mentioned this one because this is a film that I saw a couple years ago for the first time because I was curious about it because of the cast and because of the overall concept of the movie. And I saw it and I was disappointed by the film. I thought it was not as funny as it could have been. I thought it had way too many scatological shit jokes, and the raunchy humor just felt like it was just there for the sake of being raunchy. And I thought it was an unfocused mess of a film. And I thought it was a disappointing misfire. And in some ways, I still share some of the same criticisms for this movie. But after watching it again on a really sparkling Blu-ray transfer by Shout Factory that I was able to get a hold of, after watching it again in its intended format in widescreen, because for many, many years, the only way to watch this movie was in full screen. This DVD is only in full screen, so you weren't even really able to see the film the way it was intended to be seen. So I saw it in widescreen and in HD. And the second time around, with new, fresh eyes that have been helped by a lot more experience of watching movies, and a brain that's gotten a lot better at thinking critically when it comes to cinema, I ultimately came away fairly satisfied with the film. I liked it. I didn't think I still don't think it's a great movie. I do have issues with it, a lot of the same problems that I had with it previously, but I don't think it's a total misfire anymore. And I definitely don't feel that it's a bad film. I think this is a pretty good, pretty decent period piece comedy with some legitimately good performances by the cast, amazing direction by Alan Parker, the director, and a really fun concept that's fairly unique for a period piece. Most period pieces I'm not really big on, but this one I like because it embraces the absurdity of things. It doesn't really take itself too seriously. Even when it sounds like it might be getting pretentious, the pretentious dialogue is just another joke. So it's not like it's meant to be taken seriously, like some of these films that have these pretentious lines of dialogue about society and its ills, and you're supposed to take it seriously. That's not the case with this film. So that honestly was pretty refreshing. And it's just one of those movies that also, from a visual standpoint, is absolutely spectacular. This movie has some really stunning production and art direction. The cinematography is gorgeous. This is a film that really does do a absolutely great and grand job recreating the setting and the atmosphere from the particular time period that the film is set in. Now, it's directed by Alan Parker, and like I said, I think his direction is amazing when it comes to the visuals, when it comes to the various different personalities and energies of the cast, as well as just the energy of the film. I feel that for the most part, it has a very even energy throughout, despite how zany and crazy some things get throughout the film's running time. I do feel, though, that he should have hired another writer or two instead of him being the only voice in the writer's room. Because this is a film that ultimately, at the end of the day, feels like it took way too many paths for me personally when it comes to the story. You don't really know if it's going to be a fun, zany romp, or a satire of health clubs or health nuts, or a scathing, biting teardown of capitalism. It's trying to be all three of these things, and I don't think it really succeeds fully with either of those options because of the decision to try to do all of these things in one movie. I feel that the screenplay really would have benefited a lot from just focusing on the health nuts, health club satire, because that's the focus of the film, taking place at the Sands, Dr. Kellogg's sanitarium that he rebuilt into this rehabilitation resort for people to come and get well. And I feel that that's really what the focus of the film should have been. Also, there's too many cooks in the kitchen in terms of the characters and their stories. As much as I like John Cusack, his story felt completely pointless. It felt like padding, even though Parker wrote some really good roasts on capitalism for Michael Lerner's character and that subplot to say. It's still stuff that's been said before in other films and things that have been done many times over when it comes to capitalism and taking it down a peg. So I feel that whole thing was just not necessary. You could have had John Cusack be in the film another way. I honestly would have liked that more because the one scene that he has with Matthew Broderick at the bar is a lot of fun. They have great chemistry, and I just it would have been nice to have seen them have more scenes together in the film instead of that one scene or maybe one near the end. And yes, I understand why the whole stuff with the cornflakes is there and so on and so forth with John Cusack's character trying to be an entrepreneur, and they bring in Dana Carvey's character, Kellogg's estranged son, and it gives more stuff for Dana Carvey to do. And Dana really, to be perfectly honest, Dana almost completely stole this movie with his cameo in this film. But you could have had Dana involved in similar sort of stuff in a different capacity. You easily could have done that. So I don't feel that subplot was necessary. And then this whole stuff with Bridget Fonda and Matthew Broderick, their characters of William and Eleanor, they don't really have any chemistry, and they have this romance that's having issues, and I think it's refreshing to show that she was one of the main reasons why he's so sick, because she was tired of him being an alcoholic, so she did a pretty nasty thing and fed him this elixir or whatever that's supposed to cure him of alcoholism, but it had opium in it, so she turned him into an opium addict. So it was refreshing to see how open the story was in terms of showing the wife in that kind of light, but they didn't really have any chemistry with one another. You didn't really buy that they were a loving couple. It doesn't help either that they cheat on one another throughout the film. Matthew Broderick, in particular, is banging some sick woman with green sickness, which is honestly really, it's honestly kind of gross. And so there are a lot of stuff that goes on with these characters that makes them really not that likable. So as leads, that hurts the film and the story because of the way that they're written. I understand that they are written in a flawed manner, but I feel that there's a different way they could have gone about their characterization, because as a result, when you're watching the movie, you're just kind of like, these two are a bunch of twats. Like, why should I really care? Whether they get well or they get out of the sanitarium or they get back together. And that's a big part of the story, is this whole arc about them and their time at the club, and whether or not they're gonna rekindle their relationship, and so on and so forth. And it leads to some fun scenes like Matthew Broderick encountering Dr. Spitzvogel and Cole Meany's character, Dr. Lionel Badger, in the woods somewhere, pleasuring his wife. So it leads to some fun, sequences like that with some legitimately fun and hilarious lines of dialogue where Lightbody finds Badger and he's like, "You were masturbating." "I was not. I was massaging my colon." "Massaging your colon? I know where the colon is, and it doesn't stick up in the air." So, that was funny. But, I just felt there was too many moments with these characters where the passion wasn't there, and you just really disliked them as characters, and that really did not help when it comes to the film overall and the film's pacing. That's something that I feel could have been better too. Is by the last 30 minutes or so, it really starts to drag because of all these different threads and all these different paths that it has decided to take with its story, and it just gets exhausting after a while. But like I said, I still ultimately like the film, and I think it's a pretty decent movie for the setting, for the visuals, for the production and art direction, the writing when it comes to the scatological humor and the raunchy sex jokes. Like, when I first saw this, I didn't find them as funny, and I thought it was just too much. But when I watched it again, I thought it didn't. I thought actually, for the most part, those were the stronger moments of the movie. Is when it was having those kind of things, and I honestly feel it could have gone even further, been even raunchier, been even crazier, shown even more of Kellogg's ridiculous inventions. Because there is something really funny about Dana Carvey's character throwing boxes of shit at rich, spoiled people at a health club. And just having Dr. Kellogg and his colleagues have to deal with it. He's throwing, he's throwing, what? He's throwing boxes of shit at the guests! It's just so insane and out there. You would never even imagine that would even occur, and it's happening, and it's honest, it's pretty funny. And Anthony Hopkins really does go all in with this performance as Dr. Kellogg. Has this almost foghorn leghorn kind of accent, and really does embrace the absurdity of Dr. Kellogg and his belief that the cure or the path to a healthy life is through the bowels. So it makes sense that the film has a lot of scatological humor, a lot of fart and shit jokes, because it's a way for the screenplay to tear Dr. Kellogg down. And I feel that's a perfect way to tear him down. Is to tear him down with shit and fart jokes, because he thinks the path to the bowels is the key to happiness and to health. What better way to tear him down than to pour shit on him? To literally shit on him. So it's something that I've learned to appreciate with this second viewing. And the raunchy stuff, like the women talking about their bicycle smiles and some of these other things, and is honestly pretty refreshing when it comes to this kind of movie that takes place in this particular era. It's kind of fun to see a period piece go into that territory, because a lot of them are just hoity-toity, take themselves too seriously, they aren't going to go there. And let's be honest, even back then, people were thinking about sex, people were thinking about all this kind of stuff. Let's not lie and act like they were all saints. That's not the case. So yeah, while the script could have been more focused, it still has its fair share of moments, some hilarious stuff, great bits of dark humor. There's a sequence that really gets me every time, where Lightbody, Matthew Broderick's character, and a good friend of his at the club, Hart Jones, who's played by John Neville, and this Russian guy who doesn't speak English, who has a really severe case of flatulence. And so they are relaxing in one of Kellogg's absurd really crazy inventions, and this one is incredibly dangerous, like a lot of his inventions are. I mean, a treadmill with an enema, a yogurt enema thing attached to it, so you're running on a treadmill with fucking yogurt getting pumped up your ass. Yeah, that's really not the healthiest thing. Or these contraptions that are supposed to like wash your body, but they're just like smacking you around like you're stuck in a car wash. Um, but so this particular invention though is a death trap. Literally, you sit in a chair and you put your feet in pails of water while you are electrocuted. This is a real invention. This is something that Kellogg actually thought would cure people, would actually make people healthier. It's having them place their feet in buckets of water and sit down and get electrocuted on purpose. So what happens is the the machine breaks because it can't handle the ampules, and the poor Russian guy gets electrocuted to death. Uh, um, Hart Jones and Lightbody survive, but what makes this scene so funny is the reaction by Lightbody and Hart Jones. Lightbody reacts like anybody would, the normal way. They're dead! They've been electrocuted! And then a John Neville with just a perfect, just great deadpan. He's just like, rather a severe cure for flatulence, I do admit. And you're just like, that's just comedy gold. It's dark comedy gold. John Neville just makes that so funny. So there's a lot of stuff like that in the film in terms of the dark humor. There's a scene where Dr. Kellogg, he's talking about his own stools, and because he asked Matthew Broderick's character Lightbody for a stool sample. He gives him one. He's bemoaning how bad it smells, and he's all like, "My own stools, sir, are gigantic and have no more odor than a hot biscuit." And then there's the moment where one of his friends, actually it's his colleague, Poltny Dab, he passes out in the street in front of the Sand, which is the name for the rehab facility that Dr. Kellogg is running. And this is his reaction to his colleague falling down and passing out. It's like, "Polt, I believe you've suffered a heart attack. Worse, much worse. You're dead, sir. Could you have picked a better place to die, Polt, instead of out here in the street in front of everybody? Some poster child for biological living you are." He doesn't even care. He gives no fucks. This guy fucking died right on the spot, and he's just like, "Could you have died somewhere else?" So, yeah, I really do get a kick out of those particular sequences in the film. And I feel Anthony Hopkins is just such a really fun and riotous role for Anthony Hopkins, and he really chews the scenery here. But even with his appearance, with these like buck teeth prosthetics and stuff like that. But yeah, overall script it could be better, but it also could have been a lot worse. And there's also one more thing I want to mention. Dana Carvey has this. What makes this scene so funny is just Dana Carvey's extreme reaction. So Dana Carvey plays this character who is the strange son of Dr. Kellogg, plays George. And Dana Carvey is, his character George is hanging out with John Cusack and Michael Lerner, and they're talking about getting him involved in their cornflake business because his last name is Kellogg. And they have some kind words to say about Kellogg, and George is not having any of it and just completely out of nowhere and with just the most malice possibly. After John Cusack says the doctor is a very great man, George is like, he's a fuck pig. I hate him. Oh man. Anyway, while I'm on the road talking about Dana Carvey, let's talk about the cast. It's a really great cast. You got Anthony Hopkins as Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. Honestly, one of his best performances in terms of the comedic elements, and even when it comes to the serious acting, because the flashback sequences when he is dealing with young George, who isn't responding to him. He wants meat and potatoes. He is clearly mentally ill in some capacity. There's some really good acting there by Anthony Hopkins, where he takes it seriously when he's saying lines like, "I don't understand why he doesn't love me. I give him everything. Haven't I given him everything that he could ever want?" And so you actually do have some genuine emotions while you're watching that scene because of how good Anthony Hopkins' performance is as that character. And then when he's supposed to be funny and goofy and this really amicable and over-the-top character or caricature in Kellogg when he's at the sand, he's also quite impressive. Matthew Broderick, I think his performance is fine. I think he did a good job playing essentially a straight man to all the craziness that's going on. I feel the character could have been written better in terms of making him a little bit more likable, but that being said, I don't think the performance was a problem. Bridget Fonda, she's honestly kind of just an ice queen in this. I think she was miscast. I don't really feel she really added a whole lot to this movie. I think you should just cast more for star power than anything else. John Cusack, he's in it for a bit. His energy can be a bit overbearing at times, but that being said, I still feel that he should have been in the film more, especially had more scenes with Matthew Broderick, and his performance is fine. It's nothing terrible. Dana Carvey is George Kellogg, one of his best performances. He is so good in this film. He's downright creepy at times, so creepy that he could have been a great villain. He could have been a really good, creepy villain in a psychological thriller. And he's also incredibly funny. I mean, playing this demented character who, honestly, you grow to actually feel for him. I think George is just a genuinely mentally ill person. He was a mentally ill child, and Kellogg didn't know how to handle him, and most people don't know how to, especially back then, didn't know how to handle those type of kids. And as he got older, the illness got worse, and so he didn't get any treatment for it. So he was just essentially a bum on the street. So he just fell further and further into this madness, and you honestly do feel for Dana Carvey's character as the film goes on. With some of the strongest, honestly, the strongest dramatic elements are the stuff dealing with Dana Carvey's character, especially the flashbacks with young George played by Jacob Reynolds, excuse me, and Jacob Reynolds was fantastic. That kid was great. Michael Lerner plays Bender, this guy who's essentially just a satire of capitalism. Lerner did a good job performance-wise, but Cole Meany's in it as Dr. Lionel Badger, this vegetarian who has these really crazy new wave kind of ideas for sexual pleasure for women. John Neville plays Hart Jones. He's really I would have loved to have seen more of him as well, especially his back and forth with Matthew Broderick. They had great chemistry in this movie. Lara Flynn Boyle plays Ida Muntz, this woman who's attending the sanitarium and has green sickness, Traci Lind is in this as Nurse Graves. It was fun seeing Traci Lind in this kind of film. I honestly wish she was the Bridget Fonda character, or maybe Lara Flynn Boyle. I just don't really feel Bridget Fonda really added a lot to the movie. She's just very cold and lifeless throughout the film. She was more cold and lifeless than Lara Flynn Boyle's character, who has the green sickness. That's at least how I felt about it. But yeah, that's the main cast, and they all do their jobs well. I thought the cast was great. The music is by Rachel Portman, who's known for doing a lot of romantic films, and this score is almost Danny Elfman-esque in a lot of ways. Got kazoos and all kinds of crazy instruments. It's very zany, but it fits the film well in terms of the atmosphere and the overall mood of it. Cinematography by Peter Bizot, gorgeous. It's a beautiful looking film. And I thought it was well edited by Gary Hambling as well. And I can't sing enough praises about the production and art design. They recreated the entire sanitarium out of a building. I think they might have actually just built it from the ground up, if I remember correctly, on location somewhere. And they did a great job of really staying true to the period of this particular film, the era that this film takes place in, and they used the budget to its utmost fruition. $25 million, and every bit of it was spent, and every bit of it was on screen, with the wacky inventions and the finale where the sanitarium burns down, and they did it all for real. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say about The Road to Wellville. Except if it interests you, if the trailer looks interesting, if you're curious about it for the cast or the overall concept behind it, I would recommend giving it a watch. Even if you're not really a fan of period pieces, I think there's something here for folks that aren't really that into that kind of stuff, in terms of the raunchy humor, in terms of the overall approach that the film takes. Keep in mind, the first time around, the scatological humor and stuff like that might wear thin on you. But hopefully, maybe with this with some added context, it might work for you, but it might not, and that's fine. This film did not do well and only made like $6 million in the box office. It wound up in a lot of critics' worst of lists of 1994. I don't think it's that bad, and I feel it's a tad bit underrated. I don't think it's like a really underrated gem by any means. I think it's a little bit underrated because I don't think it's as bad as the critics made it out to be when it came out. Like, they put it on lists along with films like Exit to Eden. Like, this is not on the same level as Exit to Eden. I mean, that film is pure trash and is nearly unwatchable. This is not the case. That's not the case with this movie. Anyway, yeah, I don't know what else to say about it, except thanks for watching my review, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.